What's going on, everybody? What's going on? It is Friday, June 21st, 2024, and we are back with another stream here on the Torian Rain Reloaded channel. A little bit later than usual, but it's a reason for that, of course, as y'all can see by the title. But before we get into all of that, shout out to everybody that is here so far in the chat. Shout out to everybody who is a member of the channel, everybody on Patreon, those who send me stories, everyone who follows me on the different social media platforms that I'm on, everybody in the Discord. Shout out to each and every one of you as well. But yes, this is a very special live stream that we are doing this evening. I say we because I am not by myself this evening. But before we go ahead and get into all of that good stuff, let me go ahead and acknowledge the people who are here so far in the chat. We have mom of two Leonida Blue, Hacksign KT, Dark Titan, Jerry Bedford, the Church of Black Power, Wallow J, Denise Scales, Hacksign KT, Scoop 2003, Savion Draco Zero, Robert Brown, RBJ, Dante Cooper, PD That Remains, Reparations Nation, Zavon Scott, Anthony Ruger Phillips, Derry B, Kane the Bad Guy, Daughter of the Most High, Joseph Washington, Dewani Nelson, Kazuma Fury, and Chichi Banania. I'm glad that each and every one of you are here, and Kamora just popped up in the chat as well. So, as y'all can see by the title, I have a very special guest on with us this evening. This is an individual that I've had on my platform, I believe, twice already, maybe 3 times. I'm not entirely sure, but they have been on my channel multiple times. Y'all probably have heard of him if y'all been following me, at least if y'all been subscribed to my channel for at least the last year and a half, because that's around the range when he came on for the first time. Then y'all are familiar with him. But if you are not familiar with him, you will be more than familiar with him today, because he comes to us to bring information about his new book. Y'all see me talk about it. I posted it up. I said when I get through reading this book, I'm definitely going to have him on the channel to interview him and, tell the people about himself, as well as this new book that he has put out there. I posted the link in my community tab what the book is, so people can go ahead and purchase it and all of that good stuff. It's a lot of gems to be dropped in there. And if you definitely consider yourself a blerd, which is the combination of black and nerd, this is definitely the information you want to hear. I literally nicknamed this book the Blerd Bible for a reason. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring to the stage Cool Colas. What's going on?
What's happening? I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. I'm glad that we were able to come together and do this. I guess you can say this collab. I don't want to call it an interview because an interview still seems kind of structured. So it's just more like a conversation. And I feel like now we're family because we met for the first time last week at the Rally for Reparations. I met you and I met your wife. Lovely individuals. We had a nice lengthy conversation right as the rally was getting ready to end, and then we was in such deep conversation. It's like time was just a thing. Like we just didn't care about it. It felt like we was catching up, like almost like a little mini reunion, and we just met for the first time. And then when we went to that little after event, it's like we picked up the conversation where we left off. So it was almost like we had a mini interview, quote unquote, before you coming on today.
Yeah, pretty much. It did kind of feel like it felt like we had we had talked a bunch of times before, like you said, but really it was like our first time actually meeting in person. But it just felt natural,
It really did. It really did. Yeah. I'm glad that we was able to connect. I remember you said that you was going to come there, and not only did you do that, but you did me the grand favor of signing my book. And you know what's so crazy? I didn't even read what you had wrote until I had got home. But then I read it and I said, "That's a dope message." First off, your penmanship. I wish I could write like that. I mean, my handwriting can be like chicken scratch sometimes, but the way that I was like, how in the world? I'm like, this is so. It's almost like it's like you were writing in your own font, but it was like it was dope how you did it. I'm very appreciative though of that, and I believe I see your wife is right there in the chat.
Yeah. She said she was going to come through.
Okay,
but yeah, I was going to say, people growing up always told me I could do calligraphy, but it wasn't really my thing. It's just all right.
Definitely. That's the word I was thinking of, calligraphy, because your handwriting is just like very, very neat. Like, don't ask me to sign too much. My name sometimes I gotta when I sign my own name, my name is I just gotta do one letter in the last name. That's about it.
Right.
But yeah, I'm glad that you are on with us this evening. But before we really get into everything, tell the people a little bit about yourself. And by the way, y'all, I actually pinned his YouTube channel at the top. So make sure y'all go and subscribe because he's closing in on 1,000 subscribers. Let's see if we can make that happen before the end of the year. Definitely do it because you're not far off.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, what, 300 away? Something like that, 300, 350?
No, you're less than that. I checked. You're like 9.
Oh, no, 35. I'm tripping. 35. I'm tripping.
I was about to say, I just looked at it. I was like, wait a minute. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm tripping. Yeah.
Yeah, but go ahead and let the people know about yourself, who you are, just in case they're not too familiar with who you are.
Most definitely. So my name is Cool Colas. He just introduced me, of course. I've been on here a few times. I'm an author. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. I'm a pro-Black media analyst. I go by Cool Colas on Instagram. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Pro-Black, Blerd King, certified.
And trust and believe me, all of that and then some. He's giving you the summarized version. Trust me when I tell you that. I keep going back to that podcast. I keep going back to that podcast. But yeah, that's definitely that's like I said, that's a summarized version of who he is. But like I said, if y'all look and check out his YouTube channel, like everything that y'all are going to hear this evening, y'all can definitely check out on his YouTube channel, definitely at length. And the way that he breaks it down is very, very interesting. And if y'all follow that Instagram page, that's also a very good breakdown as well. And that's actually, and the thing is, I can't even remember how we even crossed paths as far as social media goes. I don't know if I found you or if you found me. I can't remember exactly how it happened.
I think I reached out to you on Instagram because I had been watching your YouTube videos in the past. So I figured like you'd be somebody good to connect with because a lot of stuff we talk about similar. So yeah,
definitely. Mm-hmm. And let me just tell y'all something right now. This book is I'm gonna use a throwback. All that in a pot of grits. Listen, this book right here is just amazing. First off, but I'm gonna see where the chat is. To the chat, put a 1 in the chat if you have bought the book, because I posted it up in my community tab. Put a 2 if you have not bought the book. I'm going to change it up a little bit by the end, because by the end it's going to be a lot of people saying I plan on buying it if they didn't buy it. But the first thing I wanted to ask you is, as it pertains to the book. Well, first off, how did you even get into this space of wanting to address this as a topic? Because when it comes to people who go and talk about, I guess you can say, nerd culture or pop culture is seen as a certain way, especially if it comes from a Black person, because we all know when it comes to that space, it's very heavily dominated by, let's just say white people, especially white men. It's a very heavily white male dominated space. So how did you find yourself going into that space, but also in the same way carving out your own lane? Because the way you come at it is very different.
Most definitely. First of all, I appreciate all the compliments before I really get into the breakdown, because it means a lot. But as far as getting into the Blerd space and talking about kind of the mechanics of the things that I look at, I wanted to take what my values already were, which were pro-Black values, and I wanted to combine that with my interests. But with combining that meant that I had to really take a deep look into a lot of the stuff that I enjoy. So I'm looking at a lot of like the comic movies and TV shows, and then I'm looking at the way that our people are portrayed in a lot of these things, right? So when I really took a good look at some of the stuff that I enjoyed, I realized that there were a lot of tropes, there were a lot of misrepresentations of the way that we look, and I felt that a lot of it, there was a science behind it, right? I felt like there was we had to really look at all of the ins and outs. We have to look at who are the people that are controlling these images. We have to look at what are these images and breaking them down. We had to look at why this is something that hasn't been tackled. And let's be real, when it comes to the Blerd space, a lot of people really aren't familiar with it, and the fact that it's a lot different from being like a regular nerd, right? Yes. And so like it's a cultural type of thing. And I think that when you really look at it, one of the reasons why I think us as Blerds have not really tackled the idea of white supremacy and racism being in the content we enjoy is because I think a lot of Blerds really are into escapism. They use the things that they're interested in to escape from reality. So that's basically the leverage that they use. And I really wanted to have something that broke down kind of the science behind that.
Right. And also, by the way, I just posted the link to the Amazon where the book is at, so you can click the link if you want to go purchase the book. Not really if, you should, because the way that the breakdown and how you broke everything down, and this is something I definitely complimented you on when I met you last week, of how you broke down everything to its finest, to the finite. I mean, down to the molecular level. You did not leave one crumb on the table. So the people who never even probably knew what a blerd was will find out what that is. And the thing is, some of them probably are, but didn't know what the terminology was. I mean, you broke down what the difference is between a blerd and a geek. The way that you broke that down between being a blerd, being a geek versus a nerd, and then you had then you broke down the tropes, and then you had the subtropes, and even those subtropes had tropes. I'm like, how is this man? I'm like, how is this man even able to break all of this down to a science? Like, it's like you did some very thorough research and studying to put all of this together. How long did it take you to work on this book?
It probably took me somewhere around maybe like 8 months or so to like write it and flush it out and put in everything that I wanted to. And one thing I did want to say is the main reason why I, took my time with it was because I really wanted to break it down to the point where there was no confusion, because a lot of times, like, people make statements and things like that, and they'll be true, but there's not really context. And with my brand, one of the things I've always said is that context is key in every single thing that you do. And the reason why that's super important is because it tells you the difference between certain things that show up and why they show up the way that they do. I think that we need to, look at kind of like the ins and outs as to how we even got to this point where there is, again, like white supremacy and racism and a lot of like blerdy content. So I think it was really important to really break down every single term so people understood kind of like all the nuances.
And not only did you break down every term, but you gave examples to go along with it. And I like that you did that, because a lot of times when people look at things, they'll only see it on the surface level. And I like that you put in shows there that anybody can pretty much watch. Like, some people may or may not watch a certain show, but you threw in shows in there that I didn't even expect you to put in there. Like, you put Power in there. And I know I have some people in the chat. I know one for certain that watches Power and even BMF, and that's all in the same kind of realm. And when you broke that down, I was like, wow, it made me want to go back and rewatch it. And I like that not only you gave examples for the shows, you even put down the episode it was on, what season it was, and the timestamp. So you don't have to try to like, okay, we know the show, but okay, what episode is it? What season is it? When did it happen? And I like that you did that. That's what I'm talking about when I say you did some very good, thorough research to put just that in. That was impressive. I think that is probably what impressed me the most about the book.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and that was the main thing too. I wanted to make it very like clear what I was talking about and reference the things that I was talking about. So when it came to like a lot of these TV shows, I did go even beyond some of like the comic book TV shows and movies. And the reason why I kind of got into, things that people regularly see is because I wanted to also make it relatable. I wanted to be a thing where like, even if you're not a blerd, you could really understand where I was coming from some of the TV shows that we either watch currently or even some of the sitcoms we used to watch back in the day.
Definitely. And the thing is, and I like that you said that this is a series, because if you look at the title of the book, the series. So to those out there, once you finish this book, just know there's going to be another one on the horizon. It might be a little bit different, but it's part of, I guess you can say, since we're talking about, I guess you can say Blerds, you can say it's a part of a saga. So there's definitely going to be more. And I can't wait to see what is going to come and follow behind us, because this is a tough act to follow. But I know that you're going to really, pull it out there. And what I also like too is the way that you incorporated real life scenarios, like you threw in instances of things that happen in your life. A lot of them happen in the workplace. I'm sitting here saying to myself, this man got an example for every type of workplace he was in. I'm like, it sounds like that movie Horrible Boss.
Hey, you ain't lying, no.
I was like, how in the world is he working with these individuals? I'm like, my goodness.
Yeah. What I've noticed is that in a lot of work situations is where you see a lot of instances of like white supremacy and racism. You see a lot of microaggressions. You see a lot of things that happen to you while you're on the job that really don't get talked about. And so I think that the main reason for me doing that was to try to make that nexus to show that, hey, these things that we see on TV aren't just images that are supposed to indoctrinate us and then that's it. They actually translate to real life. It's not just art, you know what I mean? It's something that actually affects like the other parts of our lives. And the main thing that I think I wanted people to also grab from that is that there's different areas of activity, right? And so when we talk about a lot of like stuff that Blerds are into, we're talking really about entertainment or a certain part of entertainment media, that is. But there's other areas of activity that get affected. And in this case, that's like employment.
Yeah. And and the fact that you said areas of activity, that just makes me think of the Queen Mother herself, God rest her soul, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And you know, that's another book that I call that one the Black Bible. The ISIS papers. That I said that should be required reading for every Black household. We know we can't say in school, so we know that book would get banned immediately.
Oh,
I said that should be required reading for every Black household, especially if you are FBA, especially because that book literally speaks to you. And like I said, for every person who considers themselves to be a Blerd, this is the Blerd Bible right here. Like literally from cover to cover and everywhere in between, there was a gem being dropped. Now I got to ask a question. That introduction, the introduction alone, I didn't get to tell you this when we was there, but I said the introduction could have been a book by itself. That was a lengthy introduction. I can't remember how many pages that was, but I was like, my goodness, I'm like, this is. I said, wait a minute. I hope I'm not reading chapter 1 and thinking that's the introduction, but that was a lengthy introduction.
Most definitely. What I really wanted to do was set the tone. You know, I could have made a book where I just talked about tropes, right, and just gave a bunch of examples and said, "This." Which I'm glad you did it. Right. You know, I could have did it, and the reason why I did it like that is because I wanted to. I'm trying to gear people where they're being taught to find these images themselves. If I just lay out examples, it just shows you a trope that you may or may not see. But I want to actually train the person's mind to think like a person who is, you know, when they're watching these things, they're watching out for these different tropes they see.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
So what chapter, if you can remember, what chapter would you say was your favorite to write? Like, what's the one you was excited the most about? Which, like, if you could think of it.
I liked writing a lot of them, but the reasons why I'll say it was a lot of the beginning ones, specifically 1, 2, and probably 4. I might actually put extra attention on 4 is because of how much detail was needed and how excited I was to get all that stuff out there. The reason why I really specifically liked 4 was because I talked about some really heavy things on there, controversial things that I've been wanting to like really kind of say and kind of get into. With my platform, I'm only able to really talk about things to a certain extent. You know, you only get a picture and a certain amount of words for your caption and whatnot, but it really allowed me to flush out some of the stuff I had already talked about. So I would say chapter 4, because that actually took a lot of research. So I felt like it was a challenge to do, but at the same time, it was the challenge was putting things together and researching just to make sure everything was cool. But I just thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think I had told you when I saw you, I think I had mentioned chapter 4.
You did.
As one of my favorite chapters in that book, because it just blew my mind. And I think I forgot what chapter it was. Maybe I think it was a later chapter, more towards the end, maybe 8 or 9. It was the shortest chapter in the book, but it was a lot in that short chapter. I don't know how you could compact all of that. I think the chapter was maybe about 10 pages, and it was a lot in there. And I mean, just like I'm still stuck on them tropes though. Them tropes just like completely just blew my mind. Like, can you give the audience an example of just one of those tropes?
Sure. Matter of fact, I want to give you an example of a trope that was actually broken down to a sub trope too. That way, people know kind of like where I was going with it. So to preface it, I not only included tropes that people knew about, I actually created my own tropes based off of patterns that I've seen, right? And so one of the things I talked about in this book, and I've talked about also on my social media channel, is a trope called the black carbon copy trope. I talked about that multiple times throughout this book, but the main reason why this one is so important is because everybody always talks about this thing called race swaps. Now, from my perspective, the trope is called black carbon copy, meaning you're basically making a carbon copy of a character that is non-black and you are turning them black, you know, in order to try to create some type of representation, as they always say. So there are two sub tropes that were within this trope. One of them is race swapping and the other one is mantle passing. So everybody knows about race swapping, right? That's when you basically take a character that was white in whatever show, comic, whatever movie, and then you just turn them black and you don't change anything else about them except maybe like the phenotype, but you keep the name the same, the story and everything else. Then the subtrope would be mantle passing. Now, mantle passing is when they get a little bit more advanced. And usually that's when they may like change a little bit more. They may change the character's name. They may change the character's story. But like the husk of the character comes from, like the shell of the character comes from some character that was white. But the reason why this is very important is because oftentimes when they create carbon copies or mantle pass characters, they often already had some level of like repackaging done. And what I mean by that is usually when a lot of these white supremacists create their lore, what they like to do is they like to scout black culture like just initially. And they like to literally take the things that they scout, turn it into a white character, repackage it. And then when they make either a mantle pass or a carbon copy character, they repack it. They do a reverse repackaging thing where they'll basically make it seem like the original character was white. And then they did us a favor by making the character black when they originally scrapped something from black culture to make the character anyway. So I've seen that quite a bit. And that's why that's so important, because it's deep.
Yeah. And I think we've seen that happen quite a bit.
Oh, yeah.
In the last few years, and not even just in like anything comic book related, but even in other like films and television shows. I mean, the references, and then on top of that, now I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't watch the CW shows quite like that. Except outside of me, you know, well, I'll put it like this: the Arrowverse, except for Black Lightning. That was probably the only one that I really watched. But you gave a lot of examples just in the Arrowverse alone. For those who don't know what the Arrowverse is or was, because it's no longer a thing anymore, because that all the shows pretty much are done. You had like Green Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning, The Flash, Batwoman. All of that was a part of the Arrowverse, but it was so many tropes that you listed down in there. And the thing is, I didn't even have to watch any of those shows, but I might have come across them maybe because someone maybe have reacted to an episode and I saw some things and I'm like sitting here saying to myself, wow, you picked that apart like it was nothing.
Yeah, man. It's because there's so many tropes in the Arrowverse in those shows. They did a lot of like real deceitful, sneaky shit, to be honest with you. Yeah. So it was easy to really pick apart a lot of the stuff that they did. Now, the one thing that I will say is that although I did enjoy elements of like these Arrowverse shows, I did notice that a lot of them were big into trying to make social justice messages. So it was easy to really kind of use them as examples to show how they try to create their own messages in media. Now, the one thing I wanted to kind of go back to when we were talking about the carbon copy trope, it is very common because you do see it even with the Little Mermaid. Remember how the Little Mermaid, Ariel was white, and then they used Halle Bailey to play the live action Little Mermaid. So that right there, for example, that's an example of a carbon copy sub trope.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. And we remember how all of that went down, which also leads me into this one. The bastardization of the word woke. Look, my God. That could be a whole book in and of itself. But what is your take? I already kind of know what it is, but just for the audience sake, what is your take on the complete, speaking of repackaging, because that's basically what they did, bastardization and repackaging of the word woke, and how do you feel about Black people who use that version of that word, especially since that's a word that came from us and we know what it originally means?
Most definitely. So yeah, that's definitely a loaded question, but to tackle all of it, I would say I think that white people, you got to look at like what type of white person is using it. Usually, when I see a lot of conservatives use woke, it could mean one or two things. It could either mean that they're describing somebody who is Black, like that. It just means it's just like a dog whistle for Black. Or what I've seen them doing, sometimes I see liberals do this too, is they use woke to mean anything that is not Anglo white and male. So in other words, they're conflating, being Black with being a woman, being like the minority shit. So like they're conflating all that stuff together. So I think that it's different depending on who is saying it, which is the problem, because there's really only one definition and people are trying to make new definitions out of it. As far as Black people who say woke, so here's the thing. You also got to kind of like read the room a little bit. You got to see like the type of Black person who is saying this, right? So are they saying in a connotation where they're saying it in a mocking way? Because to me, that gives me Sambo vibes. That gives me I pander to white people and kiss white ass vibes, right? Like when you use it in a joking way. But I think because it's been so, like you said, bastardized, most of us know not to really use that word now at this point, because that's the first thing that you're going to think is that you're using it in a mocking way. So
and it's crazy too, because the people, I don't know if you've been seeing it on social media, but I especially see it on X, but now they've actually come up with a terminology called the woke right, because now the same people who claim to be anti-woke are now using the woke, but for their advantage. Like you have people like Charlie Kirk and them talking about, oh, it's anti-white this and anti-white this. Wait a minute, I thought race wasn't a thing. Y'all didn't see color. White supremacy wasn't a thing, but now y'all want to use it, and then they're still even using that improperly. So it's like you bastardize the term and you can't even define it. You had that. I'm not sure if you remember what happened last year. It was a white woman named Bethany Mandel, who went viral when she wrote this book, and Brianna Joy Gray had asked her mid-sentence, "Can you define woke for me?" And she sat there looking like a deer in the headlights, and she said, "I know I'm about to go viral," because she couldn't even define a bastardized word that she wrote like at least a whole chapter on in her book. I'm like, we know you gonna lie. Why don't you just crack open your book and just read what you had? Because she lied in her book.
Yeah. The thing is that I think that when it comes to the word woke, the reason why I think people want to, like you said, bastardize it is because of what the original definition was, which is they don't like the idea of there being any type of signal that Black people are coming into consciousness of themselves and the things that are around them, because that's originally what really woke meant. So I think by bastardizing it, they're not really hinting towards anything related to waking us up in any way. So they try to give other definitions to it, so or they try to make a joke out of it. I think that's the biggest thing. They try to make a joke out of it so it doesn't seem like something that we as Black people should do. So I don't know. That's why I have like the definitions I have of it, because I think that's what happens.
Yeah, and recently now they just kind of already did it with two shows that are on right now. They just recently did it with the current season of The Boys that's on, because they just introduced a new Black character named Sister Sage, and also on. You got something to say about that?
I haven't seen it yet, but I got to check this out now that you said that. This is on the fourth season, right?
Yeah.
I ain't seen it yet, so okay, I gotta check it out.
And basically, her ability, she's like the smartest person in the world. If people were saying that her character is almost like Candace Owens, if they can compare her, but she's more savvy than Candace Owens. And then also they got this new show on Disney Plus called The Acolyte, which is a Star Wars type show, and they made sure to attach woke, the bastardized version of both of them. I said, how ironic that they attach woke to The Boys, considering if y'all watch The Boys has always had a political stance using superheroes based on what's going on current in the political climate. but now you want to stay woke because y'all introduced this black female character. Okay, we see you. And then of course on Acolyte, this is a show where the lead is a black female character. And listen, they telling themselves all the time.
Yep. I think when you look at the Gen V show, it shows you that a show that is trying to come off like an anti-hero, quote unquote, woke show really exhibits a lot of the same tropes as a lot of these regular shows that we see. And I think that one thing that we have to realize is that even in The Boys, as good as it was, there were a lot of tropes there, and there were a lot of things to cover up. You know what I mean?
And and the thing is, when it came to The Boys, especially in, I want to say season 2, the one with Stormfront. I think you talked about Stormfront in your book. That was very overt. I mean, like you didn't have to try to figure out who she was. You knew right off the bat, just off of her name. I said, "Oh, Stormfront. That's one of those 4chan anti-black forums, or it used to be." And I said, "Okay, they now they really throwing it in your face, like they're letting you know." And that's exactly what her character was. She was a Nazi individual from back in the day, and like I'm saying, if y'all watch The Boys, y'all know exactly how satisfying it was. Spoiler alert. On that last episode when she got her ass beat. I mean, I said they triple teamed her. And when I tell you, I was like jumping up and down because I think as a viewer of that show, everybody was waiting for that to happen.
Right. You know, I think they do this thing sometimes in shows where they try to make it where they have like a big bad wolf type of white supremacist where it's like the message they're trying to show is that the typical white person is not like this, but this person is just so overtly evil because of how openly racist they are. So in other words, what it does is it mitigates the effect of those kind of more covert races, which is what we typically see today. Like if they show these types of characters. And I also noticed too that a lot of times when these characters are racist, they're not blatantly racist to black people. Usually they're more systemically racist to black people, but they'll say something to like Asians or that type of thing.
Exactly. Going back to the Stormfront character, because remember remember that scene with she came in and she killed all them black people in that apartment complex just to get to the one Asian guy. She killed all of them, and then when she got to the Asian guy, she said like an Asian slur and then killed him. And her evil spread out, and she could not hide it if she tried. Even if she saw something that was like not Anglo, you could look at the expression on her face, and her facial expressions told you how much of a disdain she had. And I like that they had, because I think originally in The Boys, in the comics, Stormfront was a man. I'm glad they made her a woman in the series, in the show, because that shows you right there something we've been saying, that the white woman can just be as racist, if not worse, than the white man.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, no, I thought that it was good. It was good to show it. I just think that the thing that we got to kind of like watch out for is that they're trying to like, you know, put all the attention onto somebody who's like overtly racist to basically say these are the type of white people that you have to like kind of watch out for when they're actually a rarity. You know what I mean? Because you also see that in characters like who's another really overtly like the White Dragon in Peacemaker. I don't think you said you've seen that TV show.
You haven't seen it.
Yep, same concept.
Yeah. And well, also, like, you know, speaking of like different shows that you was breaking down, you was talking the breakdown you did of the Academy, as like I like to call it, the Academy. Everyone calls them the LGBT. and all the other letters and symbols that they can think of. Yeah. Can you give like a brief, I guess you could say, example of that particular trope? Because the thing is that can be handled in like so many different ways and so many different layers. And you broke down every last one of them.
Most definitely. And I think it needs a proper breakdown, because I think people are trying to flip my words and change up what I say on social media. But the thing that I've been saying on social media, and then I broke down even further in this book, is that there is a difference between being gay and then being a gay coon or a gay Sambo. Just like there's a difference between being like a straight person and a straight Sambo. So my thing is, I think a lot of times when it comes to the LGBT community, I have no problems with them. Absolutely. And a matter of fact, if you look at, history, there have actually been like writers who have been LGBT, like you think about James Baldwin and people like that, right? But I think there's a difference between being LGBT and then going on TV and then being performative. I also believe that. Say, go ahead. What did you say?
Silly Porter.
Right. Exactly.
Prime example.
Right.
Did you see that? Did you see that nonsense he did at the White House, kissing Biden's hand?
Yeah, I did see that. I did. Yeah. It doesn't surprise me. It don't surprise me at all, bro. What I was gonna say is that I think that what people miss a lot of times is that it's the performative actions that are not cool. And a lot of times when you see, characters who are LGBT on TV, they use them to denigrate the straight black characters, specifically straight black male characters that are on TV. So it's like an agenda to try to divide people who are straight and people who are gay in the black community. And that's why I said, like, a lot of us who are pro-black, we don't necessarily have an issue with people who are gay or any other of the letters of the LGBT, right? Like the 1,000 letters, but
and the symbols and the numbers.
And symbols, right? But we don't like when you're performative or when you're going to and using like your sexuality as like a crutch to not address white supremacy, because that also happens as well too. Like, you talk about how like being like intersectionality. You know how they always talk about how intersectionality is.
Yeah, and I've always had a problem with intersectionality because it's usually very one-sided.
It is. It's and instead of it being like an intersection, it's more like you have two people or a group of people on one side and then another group of people on another side, and usually on one side isolated is black men. Sometimes it'll be black women, but for the most part, it's black men who are straight. And then everybody else in the black community is on the other side. And that's kind of like the way that they're looking at it. And that's problematic because it shows division within the black community where we really need to be unified. And we could be unified, even if you're LGBT or even if you're straight, we could be unified. But when you're focused on intersectionality, you really don't really have a desire to tackle racism and white supremacy. And again, that's not every person who's LGBT. There's a certain group of people who identify as that, who act in this way. So I've made that distinction in the book without spoiling too much. That's what I did.
And I actually sent you. I had sent you 2 examples in a DM after when I think I was maybe halfway through the book, and I immediately saw these tropes. I'm telling y'all right now. After y'all read this book, y'all gonna be looking at stuff through a much different lens, but I promise you, you're gonna enjoy that lens. It might be a thing where you might have to watch a movie that you want to see one time just for entertainment and then go back and watch it again to catch the tropes. But 2 examples that I did send you was one from a trailer and one from a show. I had sent you an example from a trailer. So there's a new Alien movie coming out called Alien Romulus. And in the trailer, they have a black character in the movie. And I looked at it and I said, he's talking kind of funny, not because he has an accent, because he does have an accent, but I said the way he's talking is kind of robotic. And turns out I found out he's an android. And then I was like, wait a minute, hold on. That's one of the tropes we talked about, how the black character in a movie can be, you say, tech support or a robot or some type of an android. And that's something I actually picked up on before we even met, even on social media, when I was talking about different movies, especially Disney movies or movies where there were animations. Why is it that where there is a black character, they have to turn into some kind of a creature or something like that? Like you have Princess and the Frog, Princess Tiana. She's a black woman, but in about 80% of the movie, she's a frog. Yeah, like only in the beginning she's a human, and at the end she's a human. Everywhere in between, she's this amphibian.
Yep. Yeah, and that's because they don't want to show us on screen, so they're trying to put us turn us into other creatures and turn us into robots, or have us be partially a robot, so there's less of a black presence that's actually being shown. So that's why they do that. But yeah, you can see that a lot because you got a lot of like comic characters like, Cyborg and Misty Knight, she has a cybernetic and things like that. So you see a lot of, different examples of that for sure.
Yeah, and like someone else said in the chat, Will Smith in Spies in Disguise. He is like
Yep.
us, like us. He's like a special agent, and then an experiment goes wrong, and he turns into this pigeon. I'm like, you turned into a pigeon,
Yep.
one of the most filthiest birds
Yep.
ever for most
Yeah.
of the movie.
Yep. And then
and then they had to like make a joke out of it.
Yep. Yep. I was gonna say, because they either turn you into a robot, they'll turn you into some type of animal, and it's usually like a animal that is, like you said, is filthy or disgusting, or they'll turn you into like an alien or some type of like abnormal creature that nobody's seen before. So I see that a lot. Or what they'll do too is they'll create a character that isn't black at all in appearance. Like they could be an animal, alien, whatever, but then something about their essence, the way they speak, the way they act, it seems black. So you see that a lot, like with Knuckles, the Echidna from Sonic the Hedgehog, and Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z. Like you see that type of thing.
Exactly. Now the other one I sent you was also for the show Acolyte, and it was with the hair. And it's the thing of like whenever they like the cast for some reason lately, and I thought it was only going to be regulated to the video games, but we could talk about that too. Yep. Is they like to give the black male character for some odd reason that Killmonger hairstyle. It's like at this point it's been called the Killmonger. That's what this been labeled ever since Michael B. Jordan played Killmonger in Black Panther. They have been wanting to always give black men the locks at the top that's kind of over to the side, and it's usually always to the right or the right side. Sometimes it might be to the left, but mainly to the right side. And I saw that, and I immediately DM'd you about that. And I think I DM'd you both of those at the same day. I said, "Oh, look what they did with the Acolyte. They gave the black man that Killmonger hairstyle." And if you like, I'm sure you've noticed it, but someone had posted up a collage of pictures of black male characters in video games, and they all had the same hairstyle. Even those that were half cyborg themselves still had that same style.
Yeah, they love to take something that's original about our look and then make it unoriginal after a while and kind of make it so that it's not interesting anymore. Because like you can even see images like even back in the day when they made cartoons of black people, like black characters that all kind of like look the same. Like I'm gonna give you an example. So it was a black character. It was a little boy on that Magical School Bus show. He looked the same as the dude who put the Vince dude from the show Recess. I don't know if you ever watched cartoon Recess.
Oh yeah, I watched Recess.
Yep, they kind of look similar. And then it was I don't know if you remember the little Burger King cups back in the day, but there was a little black boy that was on there as well too. Kind of looked similar to them. And then it was the Earth dude from Captain Planet. They look at all of them. They all look similar. Same skin tone, same hairstyle. You know what I'm saying? There was like a meme about it actually where people were saying they all look like Moesha's daddy. I don't know if you ever seen it.
I didn't see that, but now that you say that, I can see it. They all got that same kind of low fade kind of cut.
Yep. I picked up on that, and that's because like they want to make us seem like we all kind of like look the same. It's like a racist trope and the stereotype, so they're kind of bringing that back to a certain extent. But I think it has a different connotation this time because I think there was something very special about the Killmonger character, right? There's something very like pro-black and conscious about this character, and to be honest, they were Marvel from their perspective. Killmonger was their biggest mistake. And so I think that now a lot of like creators are kind of seeing this Killmonger character and they're kind of mimicking it, you know what I mean? To try to fizzle out how special it was.
Exactly. And also too, another thing I wanted to talk about when it came to how black women are portrayed in these type of roles in these movies. And I saw how you was talking about how when you have white female superheroes, they're strong, they show strength, but they still are very feminine. An example of that would be Wonder Woman. Then when you was talking about how they have black women portrayed, they're strong, but they're not feminine. And the example of that is the Woman King. And never watched that movie. Don't plan on watching it. And then when you gave your description of that, I said that makes that now that's even moved further down the totem pole for me as far as a list of movies I'm not watching.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I had multiple posts where I talked about how nobody should watch The Woman King because of like the big lie that kind of came from it. Because really, although they told a lot of like the history of what happened, they kind of spun it in their own way to make it seem like the men were the ones that in the Dahomey tribe that were planning to enslave other black people, and the women were trying to convince them not to do this, when in reality it was actually both of them. But either way, point I was going to make though is that in a lot of these different like shows and movies, they try to make it where the white woman, even if she's powerful, can still maintain her femininity, but the black woman, they want her to look like she's burly, she's masculine, or she's like cold and she's like unfeeling. So they do that quite a bit. And the main reason why is because they want to distort our relationships. They want to distort the relationships between black men and black women to show black women, hey, this is how you should be. You don't have to deal, you don't have to like be peaceful with like black men. You don't have to have a camaraderie with them. But they don't want their women acting like that. And if their women choose to act like that, they oust them in society. And it's a part of this. I didn't talk about it. I may or may not have talked about it in the book, but like it's part of this trope I would call the let the niggas have her trope. It's like that type of thing. Like where white women get ousted in society and they're like, let the niggas have her.
Yeah. And I would say an example of a rare time where I guess you can say there was a black, I guess you could say female superhero that still came off as feminine, but she still fell into a trope where she kind of ended up being the sidekick, even though she shouldn't be, is Monica Rambeau.
Yeah. Now, the problem with Monica, though, was that, like you said, they didn't really promote her for real. And although she was, like strong and all this, they never gave her own show. She was never like the lead of anything. Although like people say The Marvels was that, but she had to share the spotlight with two non-black chicks, one of which people like to say outshined her. I don't agree, but you get the point. She just never got the spotlight that she deserved to be seen in that way, regardless. So, yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they can find a way to, flesh her out eventually.
I heard they're not though. I heard they were originally going to actually give her own series or movie actually, and they decided to scrap it.
Yeah, because wouldn't it be dope though? Like because if y'all are into comics, Monica Rambeau and Blue Marvel are actually a couple.
Yep.
A lot of people are. A lot of people are like when it comes to black couples in comics. Of course, everyone's going to think of Storm and T'Challa because like that's like the premiere. Like that's the one they push out there. But a lot of people don't know that Monica and Blue Marvel are also a power couple. And when I say a power couple, I mean a legit power couple because both of them are OP. Like seriously OP. And I don't think we're gonna see that anytime soon. I'm just being realistic when I say that.
Yeah, hell, I mean, they fucked up the whole T'Challa and Storm thing. Now that's not gonna happen.
And that was one of the things I was looking so forward to. I said, imagine seeing T'Challa and Storm get married, like that wedding. Can you imagine what that would look like play out on screen? Because I actually looked at different images on like Google of their wedding. It was, man, if they was to translate that to on screen, I might actually shed a thug tear. I would almost feel like did my invitation get lost in the mail?
Most definitely. That's funny. Yeah, I was gonna say too, to your point though about giving women black women representation is really just manipulation. It's no different than like when you see black women and they're being given certain jobs in white society, and like in a lot of these jobs they think that they can, get a lot of money and they can kind of, like raise, like get the position that they want and whatnot. And then they basically kind of divest from black men. I think it's kind of that same thing in Hollywood. They want to give black women promotion, but it's really not healthy. And I would also compare that to a certain extent to like the LGBT thing. You had talked about that a little bit earlier. They try to create images that are seemingly positive of blacks who are LGBT and black women both, but it's not really healthy promotion. It's used to distort or our relationships, or to at least cause division within the black community.
Right. Well, I guess my next question is to ask you, since like I said earlier, you have pretty much carved out a lane where you can discuss this type of thing unapologetically. Why do you think a lot of people who consider themselves to be blurs are scared to tackle the obvious, which of course is white supremacy? And do you think it's because they are unaware of it, or do you think that they are not trying to offend their, I guess, an audience?
I think it's a mixture of both. I would say more not trying to offend a certain audience than not knowing. Just because I think that we have a certain climate where we talk about a base level of like racism or racist aspects. But I would say that there is a certain level of like blurs really just not realizing all the nuances of how deep this stuff is, which is why I created this type of space for us to kind of talk about these things again, unapologetically, as you said. But what I would say is that there are a lot of Sambos who just really, again, they want to embrace escapism. Their big thing is wanting to use the things that they enjoy, comics, TV shows, video games, etc., to kind of escape from reality, because that's the reason why they are blurred in the first place. They're imaginative, so they're using that as a crutch to embrace cowardice.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I think you went into detail about that in the book about escapism, about how they feel like, and you see it and hear a lot of people say it. I go to the movies because I'm not trying to see this real world scenario in there, or in this real world scenario in there. I'm just trying to go there to escape, so I don't have to deal with that. So I can just kind of shut my brain off for a couple of hours and
simply
not
trying to have fun.
Exactly, but the thing is the trope is still there. It's like that's why I told people, when you read this book, you're gonna look at these movies very, very differently. I promise you that. And I said, now look at it. I said getting this book was not on my 2024 bingo card. Now when I go in there watch Deadpool and Wolverine, I'm gonna be looking for them tropes, because I know they're gonna be there.
Most definitely.
I know they're gonna be definitely going to be there. But like I said earlier, I'm glad that you incorporated other type of shows in there, because not everyone's going to watch like anything comic based or maybe an anime, because I'll be honest, I'm not an anime fan. I mean, as far as for me, the furthest anime went for me, if you can consider this an anime, was Yu-Gi-Oh.
That's an anime. That counts.
Okay. Yeah. Man, listen, I was a Yu-Gi-Oh stan.
So was I, bro.
Back in the day. I mean, I watched the shows every Saturday. I had got the cards. I even went to a couple of little tournaments that they had back in the day, 2001, 2006. Yeah, like I went to.
You was a hardcore fan.
Listen, I used to record on the VHS tape.
Oh shit!
I used to record the episodes and play them back, like to the point where, because I think on the VHS tapes, I forgot how many hours you had on the tape, and when it was done, I rewinded and recorded right over top of it. When they came out with the movie, I went and saw the movie. So it was a big deal. But I'm glad that you even incorporated that show in there as well, with the tropes that was going on with there, especially with the talk of history and Egyptian culture.
Most definitely. Because in a lot of like cartoon lore, like anime lore like that, they do stuff like that. Even, with that, like, you have a lot of Japanese creators, obviously, right, with anime.
Yeah, definitely.
But they kind of do the same thing. They kind of mimic a lot of like the white supremacist strategies. They'll like, scalp a lot of our culture and stuff like that. So like, because you'll see those images in Yu-Gi-Oh! And even Pokemon and things like that. And you can kind of see like where they took it from, again, Egyptian culture. Because that's like I think with Egyptian culture, there's like an elemental aspect to it. And so I think that a lot of these creators like try to draw a lot of their the things that like their content from that, but it's still there's still a level of scalping our culture that comes from that without giving us any credit. And even if you look at a lot of the characters in there, like even with Yu-Gi-Oh, notice that like the pharaoh is white. And then in the show, they even try to like, I don't know if you noticed that in the 5th season, they try to darken.
Yeah. Yes, they did. I noticed that. I said he got a serious tan.
Yep. But he still looked white everywhere else, and his hair was still all like fucked up like it was before. So it's like, to me, I felt like they were showing you how much they were trying to still whitewash it, although they were scalping stuff from our culture once again.
Yeah, but I remember you talking about a character from that show. It wasn't the original Yu-Gi-Oh run. It was in the spinoff that came in there. And I was shocked that you didn't put that in the book.
Axel. You talking about Axel Brody?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Because I remember because I remember you talking about that character before, and when you got the Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm sitting here. Oh, I said he gonna talk about that character, and when I was reading, I was like, wow. I was shocked you didn't put that in the book, because I remember how much you said that was a very good depiction of a black character in a show like that.
Well, see, the thing is, Tori, I kind of wanted to keep the idea on the fact that there are so many issues with the representation that we see. And I think by talking about Axel, it would almost be counter to kind of what we see. You know what I mean? Because like Axel to me was, for the most part, a positive image. Because again, this dude he showed that he actually was a better duelist than the main character. He actually tied like the main character while he was stronger. And he he just was like a masculine presence. Like they didn't really do anything negative to his character. But the thing is that if I would have said that in the book, it would have been like, well, there is some hope. You know, we do have some good representation out there. So I was trying to avoid that if I said that.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Because I was really looking forward to hearing you talk about that character, because like I said, I remember hearing you always brag about that character, because I did watch Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, but I don't think I made it past the first season.
Oh man.
I know he probably came later on.
He came in season 3. Yep. And the thing is, if you ever get a chance to go back and watch it all the way through, because season 3 actually was the best season of GX, by the way. But what I was gonna say is that I think one of the things that I want people to understand is that just because you may see a positive representation here and there doesn't mean that it's all good or that we should be complacent. Because that's been part of the problem, is that I think when our people sometimes see like some level of positive black representation, they assume that things are either getting better or it's not bad enough that we really need to tackle this. This is just not a problem anymore. So I didn't want to create a level of complacency. So that's why I said at some point in the book I discussed what, or at least a template of what proper representation would look like. So to your point, I probably could have used them as an example to say Axel Brody is a good character to look at when it comes to positive black representation that we see. But I wanted to put it in the minds of people that I want them to be imaginative enough to be able to create their own content and their own positive images of black people when in media.
Oh, definitely. Well, now that you put that in, I stand corrected.
It's all good.
Yeah. So, I would say like the next thing, I guess you could say is, what is your? Because I was actually like looking forward to seeing, maybe, I don't know if this is something you'll talk about later on. What is your take on? I guess you can say, we're going to take it back with this one. The blaxploitation era.
Man, I was literally talking to my wife about this earlier today, as a matter of fact. The blaxploitation era was a mixed bag. And I'll tell you the good part, because that's much shorter. But the good piece of it is that I think we had to have some form of culture and some form of seeing ourselves. It's kind of like Juneteenth. Yeah. It's kind of like MLK Day, that type of thing. We have to have some form of the idea that there's black culture out there. There's holidays that celebrate us. I feel like blaxploitation was like that, except for the entertainment scene. What I mean by that is it wasn't ideal, but it was something. Now, as far as the bad part, blaxploitation was the beginning of pacification. And I think that was the big problem. So what I mean by that is you see pacification today, and you usually see that in the form of controlled opposition type of movies. See, a lot of us who are pro-black, like you and I and a lot of people we associate with, we can see right through that stuff, but the average viewer typically doesn't. And what they usually see when they look at controlled opposition movies is that there's some form of, I guess, pro-blackness that's being shown. So it looks like, I guess, a lot of these creators, that they're kind of in tune with, how we feel and things like that. So blaxploitation kind of did that to a certain extent, but back in the 60s and 70s. And the reason why is because there were a lot of like riots and things like that were actually going on during that time period, like, during the 60s and 70s. Because think about it, you had the Watts riot, you had like the riots in Benton Harbor, Michigan, you had the riots in Detroit, you had the riots in Chicago. It was nationwide, right? So what they basically said was all these black folks are pretty much going to knock us the hell over if we keep doing what we're doing. So we have to have some form of trying to calm the energy. So what they did was they showed us images of us, one, looking good, looking fly, and two, like knocking a lot of them over, which is really what a lot of us wanted to do. So it was somewhat of an outlet. And that's why we get into that whole idea of why people like would go to theaters and they'll actually like go to see this type of stuff, or they'll see a black movie that they've never seen before. That's why Black Panther was also a success, because we've always been looking for something to make us feel good about seeing a positive representation of ourselves. But ultimately it's pacification, because we were pretty much on the way to rioting and saying like, hey, this shit is not cool and something physically is going to have to be done about this. So they felt like that was a good way to try to just tailor off the energy.
That was a great breakdown. I couldn't have put that one. I couldn't have put that one better myself. Even if I tried. And I like some of the movies definitely from that era. And of course, that was of course an era when Hollywood, or as a Hollyweird, was going through its issues, and here come black people coming to save the day as usual. And save that industry, much like another popular black character saved another industry, and we already know where we heading with that one, and that would be Blade.
Blade,
listen here. Blade is one of my favorite movies. The first two, I don't count that third one. That third,
I agree.
But you know what? We can actually talk. We can actually talk about that, because the first Blade was great. I liked it because I think one thing that stuck out to me that you rarely saw was that you have this strong black lead playing a daywalker, which you rarely saw, because when it came to vampires, you always had the tropes of the wooden stake, the cross, the sunlight, the garlic, the silver bullet, but he was immune to all of that, and he basically was a hunter. But then what I liked was that he saved this black woman from dying, and she became an asset to him. What I liked about that is that was like a good combination, because they could have easily wrote that black woman as a stereotype. But this woman was a nurse. She came up with a serum. She helped him. She fought alongside him and all types of stuff. I was mad they didn't bring her character back. Maybe that was intentional.
I was too.
But I like that they did that. And then you came back with a second one, and now and they just upped the ante. Then we get to that dreaded third one, and he gets sidelined.
He was basically a side character in his own thing.
Yes, basically.
Yeah.
I can't even remember anything that happened in that movie, because I think I only watched it once, and that was enough for me. I can go back and watch the first two, like they go out of style, but that third one, I can't.
Yeah, I think Blade really upped the ante for Marvel, and because had that not come out, Marvel probably wouldn't be what it is, right?
Oh, definitely, they saved it.
Yeah, most definitely. I think anytime you slap a black face on anything, it's automatically going to do numbers. As long as they don't do anything janky or whatnot behind it, it's gonna do numbers. And the reason why is because melanation sells just like sex. If you put a lot of sexual images on something, it's going to get a lot of attention. But if you put a black face on something, it's also going to get a lot of attention. And they know that. And that's why they've been stealing, again, our lore and repackaging it since the beginning of time, because they know that they wouldn't have that level of creativity that they have had they not taken what we look like and then our essence. So just like, for example, recently with Bad Boys Ride or Die, the fourth installment in this movie. And they said that Bad Boys Ride or Die is technically like the first summer blockbuster hit of the year, because it made, all the money. And then, Sony just needs to stop trying to do superhero movies. It's a dump. And I didn't even see that Madam Web movie, but I heard that movie was an extreme flop. So this was a win that they needed for sure, because up until this point, the only thing that they are banking on to really be the big movie of the year, of course, is Deadpool and Wolverine. But that was a given even when they announced it a while back that was going to be a big movie. But I'm like, here you have a franchise starring two black male actors who we know are good at their craft. Since 1995, they have 4 movies. All of them have done over 100 million in the box office in their opening weekend. And they literally, and Will Smith actually announced on his Instagram the other day that the Bad Boys franchise is now officially $1 billion franchise as a whole. I remember you telling me that when we were in DC. Yep.
Yeah, they said it's officially $1 billion franchise over the span of 4 movies, and with the success of this one, they said it's definitely most likely going to be a 5th one. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but I think I know what direction they should go with it. But remember, there was a time when they said black actors or black leads don't sell. Remember when they used to say that?
Yep.
They used to say that a lot, and then Black Panther came out. And I think we was talking about that when you was in DC about how that movie stayed in the box office #1 for a month. Then they had to end up prematurely pulling it out of the theaters because it was starting to run into their Blu-ray marketing. So that's saying a lot.
Yep. It doesn't surprise me at all. And a lot of times, like I said, they lie about little things like that because they know good and well that it would sell, seeing our faces, because like we live in an era where everybody is craving diversity. So of course, if you see a black face, it's going to be something that people are going to want to check out and people are going to want to see. So that's why I say, like, I think they were lying. They knew good and well that it would sell, like, a movie would sell. You see a black face on it. They just, it was just some deceit shit.
Yeah, just like when I was telling you about with the first Black Panther movie, when they had put out that projection that said, "Oh, Black Panther's going to make $90 million in its opening weekend domestically," and I said, y'all must not know black folks, because black people has been demanding to see Black Panther since Civil War.
Most definitely.
And when 2 years from now, listen, like when I went to go see Civil War, and I walked out of the theater because it was a packed crowd. It was packed in there. Like, I don't think there was an empty seat in there. And when I left out of there after watching that movie, it was so many people that walked out of there saying, "I cannot wait for that Black Panther movie." Mind you, this was an introduction to his character. He wasn't even the main character in Civil War. He was a side character. He was a supporting character.
He stole the show.
Exactly. And they introduced Spider-Man in there as well. Yeah. But everybody kept saying, "I cannot wait to see that Black Panther movie." Then the following year, they dropped the teaser for it, and it did numbers. And then the demand became even higher. And then as time went on, and they put that number out, they said, "Oh, we expected to make $90 million." I said, okay. I said, if you say so, $90 million for a Black Panther movie that's coming out in Black History Month, you better think, you better crunch those numbers again, because something is off with your math. Right. And then when it came out, I mean, it became a global event. I mean, on the news, everywhere you saw, people was wearing African garb. People was having watch parties. Even overseas, it was a big deal. Like, it was a big. I don't think I've seen any Marvel movie do that ever.
I think it also it shows you that this happens all over entertainment, right? So even if we're just going out of like the media entertainment portion, let's just look at music. It's it's similar, right? Like, you could go to another country, like for example, I think I told you this when we met, but I told you I had went to Italy before. I went to Dubai, and a couple other countries. So even when I was in Dubai, I heard a lot of like FBA music. Like, I heard a lot of Beyonce songs, and I heard like a lot of music, like when I was like in the mall, like in the Dubai mall and whatnot. And I'm thinking like, so a lot of our stuff is international. So I think about like how when it comes to entertainment, it doesn't just do well, in the United States. It does well across like just globally, right? Whenever Black people either create it or Black people's faces on it. So that's why I said that's always been a lie, because you can even look at music and tell that we do well in other parts of the world. So
I've always said that we drive the culture. I always said that we are the trendsetters of the world. I've said that so many times, and I stand 10 toes down on that until it's my expiration date. I've said that all the time, and not just even recently, but even in the past. I saw a video years ago. I think I was in high school. This was back when YouTube was still in its infancy stages. And I saw a video where it was some Japanese girls, and they literally had all these hip hop posters on their walls. Some of them were putting on makeup that was maybe a shade darker than them. They were getting the micro braids, the braids that a lot of women black girls got back in the day, and dressing a certain way over in Japan. I keep telling people, I said our culture is everywhere. Just like now, they've officially entered in breakdancing as an event in the Olympics.
Yep, I heard about that.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise. It doesn't surprise me it got to that point, but yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, so I said I never thought I'd see the day when that would actually indeed happen. And then you had, in my opinion, Kendrick Lamar drop what I believe is now the official FBA anthem with "Not Like Us."
It is.
I don't know if you, I don't know
Is.
I don't know if you saw his pop out concert that he did on Juneteenth, which was just great marketing. If you ask me, to make it, first off, where you can watch it free if you have Amazon Prime. That was smart as hell.
I
Do it
didn't
on
see
June.
no.
Yeah, yeah, he had the whole concert on if you had Amazon Prime, you could have watched the whole thing for free, didn't have to pay for it, nothing.
Oh dang. Okay.
And he literally bought out, I think that man probably bought out the whole West Coast. It was all of California anyway.
That's
And
crazy.
he performed Not Like Us 5 times in a row. And every single time he performed that song, the crowd got louder and louder and louder. That song has literally taken over the airwaves everywhere. It's literally, in my opinion, probably song of the year, and it's a diss track. That's the crazy part. It's not a song. It's not a song he planned to do. It's a whole diss track.
I know. I think that a lot of people like it, not even just because of how it sounds, but like because of the cultural relevance. It's the fact that he's calling out somebody who's really trying to appropriate the culture, right? And he's trying to cosplay us at the end of the day, talking about Drake, of course. So I think that's really why it resonated with people a lot.
Yeah, I think it's the thing because Drake was put on a pedestal very fast.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, what is it going to take to knock him off this pedestal? They were probably just waiting for, but they didn't know who. Who would have thought that Kendrick Lamar was going to be the one to do it? I'm like, Drake is somewhere in the background trying to figure something out. I'm like, I don't think you're gonna be, I'm like, I don't know if you're going to be able to claw your way out of this one. At least with the assist that you think you might get or have been used to getting, because it's probably people on your side saying, it's looking kind of bleak.
he needs to do like Meek Mill and just kind of just go quiet for a little bit so that we gotta forget the fact that he got this so bad.
Exactly. Yeah. But back to your book though. This is definitely a great piece of literature. I think everybody definitely needs to check this book out. They need to read it thoroughly. Read it a couple of times if you feel you need to. And also, like when you go and watch these movies, and not just even with the comic book movies, any movie or any show, and like really look at it and be like, okay, I see that it was from this. This is that trope right here in this chapter, and he said so on and so forth. And now it's like it's like one of those things where you read it and you can't unsee it.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think like I said, the main thing I want people to understand is that when you read this book, it's almost like you want to kind of take notes. You want to highlight things that make sense to you or that you want to relook at again. I meant to say don't make sense to you that you want to reread again. You want to also like kind of take things in so that as you're watching shows, like you said, you want to like look to see if you see any of these tropes that I actually talked about, right? Because it'll help you where you're able to identify like the ways that media is trying to portray us. And it also helps too, because I think I talked about this before, but eventually I'm going to be creating my own comic books. And I want that to turn into TV shows and movies and that type of thing, right? So it helps you to kind of identify what healthy images look like versus the ones that you tend to see on TV. So that's really the whole idea there. And then you want to also teach that to, your kids and whatnot, because a lot of them will watch this stuff and they'll absorb it like a sponge, but they won't realize what they're watching and what they're enjoying. So I think that's the other part of it too.
I'm not sure if you had this trope in the book or not, but did you have a sacrificial lamb one in there?
I had one about like the when I talked about like the sacrificial Negro, like when you have like the
Yes, like that's a huge trope right there. It's one of the more underrated ones. But like if you see it once, it's like okay, you see it again, maybe. But then once you see it that third time, it's like okay, why does it seem like they want to always use the black character to be the sacrifice, like the one that has to save the day? I saw that Did you see the movie The Creator?
I did not see that. Nope.
The sacrificial lamb was in that one.
Okay.
It was there. Like if you get a chance to watch it, you'll see what I mean. And it's crazy because the one thing that gets me about that is the character doesn't even have to do it. It's like they are all. It's like they're almost there, and then it's like it's like some kind of switch happens, and it's like, you know what? I gotta sacrifice myself for the greater of humanity. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's so what I would call that is the black martyr trope specifically. That's like, and it's usually a sacrificial Negro, like we kind of talked about, and it's usually a black man. And what I noticed is that typically that person who is sacrificial is an honorable person as well too. So it kind of goes into that like magical Negro type of territory where they sacrifice themselves for white people or just for the sakes of their presence not really being seen on the show or the movie or that type of thing, saying that their only purpose is to basically die in the name of white supremacy. That's what it really ends up boiling down to, because a lot of times these sacrifices, like I said, they're really good, honorable people. And what it shows is that there's a level of, although the white supremacists, like they kind of show these images of them hating us and they do all these like kind of deceitful things to us, I did notice that there's a level of them admiring us to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So I think that trope exemplifies that quite a bit.
Yeah, someone else in the chat just mentioned Bird Box, and I forgot about that. But yes, that's another example, was in that movie as well. And like you said, he was a good, honorable, noble guy. And then he ended up sacrificing himself for Sandra Bullock's character and those two kids. So, and that's like and it's like when you think about it, it's like there was another way they could have went up. He could have got out of there. He could have made it all the way.
I was gonna say real quick. The one thing that I did notice too is that it's usually like a black father. And it's like a black father who had like, he was married, he had like kids and that type of thing. And he was an honorable person. So I noticed that they do that quite a bit, because if you look at a lot of movies and TV shows, they don't show a lot of black family dynamics where there's a black woman and a black man who are together, who are harmonious, right? So they'll sometimes like kill off like the father. Sometimes he'll be older too. Like they did it, for example, in Princess and the Frog. Now that's a lighter example because, he wasn't like dramatically killed or anything like that. It's just that all of a sudden he died. He just wasn't a part of the story anymore. They like to do shit like that so that they set the tone that these black people basically were struggling and the black father was not in the picture. So I see that quite a bit too.
And also in that show that they had on Netflix called Raising Dion, it was a show created by Michael B. Jordan.
That was a good example.
And Michael B. Jordan's character, he was the father. He had a wife and a son. The son has superpowers, but his character was not there because he died like overseas in battle.
Exactly.
So the only time you saw him was in flashbacks.
Exactly. That's a perfect. It's funny. I actually was going to bring that up too, but that is a perfect example of the kind of like the black martyr type of trope.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm gonna throw out some examples, and like you can tell me like the tropes, like maybe if there's a show or a movie in there, an example of the tropes that's there. So the first one I'm gonna throw out there is Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
I'm gonna see if you mentioned it, because it's one in particular. It's one in particular. You had to kind of think about that because there wasn't a lot of black characters in Game of Thrones.
I only saw up to season 2. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Oh wow.
Yep. So I probably couldn't.
Well, okay. Well, do you plan on finishing it or?
No? Oh yeah. At some point, I literally got to like midway into season 2, but just never really got to finish. I saw House of Dragon though.
Okay. Well, someone actually just put in the chat what I was going to say, but there's a black character in there, and he's a eunuch.
That doesn't surprise me. That don't surprise me.
And it's so sad. And it's so sad because it's a scene in one of the later seasons. I hope you don't mind me spoiling it, do you?
Go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead.
It was a scene where it was him and one of the other characters one of the only other black characters in the show. And they planned on, having sex. But clearly that wasn't going to work because he was a eunuch. So all he could do was basically finger pop her. I'll just put it like that. That's really all he could do to pleasure her. It was so sad to watch because he put in work to get with this woman, and he couldn't really enjoy it. she couldn't be pleasured the way that she wanted to, but she made it work. But for her, it wasn't the same thing, just like it wasn't the same thing for him. So yes, and the thing is, the army he was with, they were called the Unsullied, and all of them were eunuchs, but he was like the only black person. And they all were eunuchs. So there's that. And you said you watch. So you said you watch House of the Dragon. So I can just throw House of the Dragon in there.
You said what?
You can throw House of the Dragon. I know with some tropes up in there.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Because it's way more black people in this show.
It is. Now there's a couple things that I saw in there. One thing that I saw was the nonsensical genetics trope, where like they try to make it where you have somebody who is black and somebody who is white, and then they have a kid and the kid is white. They had that type of thing going on. They also had a thing where they had the LGBT thing in there as well too. Because think about it, they had like the son and he was black, and like he was trying to get with I can't think of the family, but like it was
Targaryens.
Yep. He was trying to get with them, or the daughter. And she found out that right before they were supposed to get married, I guess that he was gay. So that's one.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So I saw that as well too. I saw they were trying to put in the LGBT representation, but they always put it on black people. They tend to do that in a lot of shows. Like you'll have one black character and then they're LGBT. So they had that going on. They also did a race swap, in that show as well too. It was a direct race swap as well. So yeah, it was a lot that I saw there. I could probably keep going, but House of the Dragon, in my opinion, from what I've seen, you could really write a whole book on just that show alone, all the tropes that they had. So yeah.
I guess another one is Stranger Things.
I haven't seen Stranger Things, unfortunately.
Oh. It's a good show. It's a good show. I actually really, and the thing is, I didn't hop on the Stranger Things bandwagon like when it first got started. So I watched the whole series from beginning to end back in 2022. But there is, I guess you can say, in this show, there's the token black character.
Okay.
It's a black male character in there, and he's a token black character. Of course, in this one, it's also an interracial thing because his girlfriend is a white girl, but she's also a redhead. And that there's always this thing with the redhead. But yeah, so there's that. He also has a sister, but the sister is kind of sassy. She kind of reminds me of D off of What's Happening.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, I saw What's Happening. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, so if you know the show What's Happening, the sister whose name is Erica, she reminds me so much of D. She's, I wouldn't say she has a potty mouth because she doesn't cuss, but she's always like talking like she's grown. She's real sassy. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to see what other one can I throw out there.
I'm hoping I watched it. I'm hoping, because if it's something I watched, I definitely caught it.
Yeah. Let me see. I'm trying to see. Maybe I can throw out a horror movie because the tropes that you can get with a horror movie is insane. Well, it's not a horror movie. What about Deep Blue Sea?
Deep Blue Sea. Oh my God, I'm trying to remember that one. I'm trying to remember.
The one with the sharks.
Gosh, I've seen bits and pieces of the movie, but I didn't see it all the way through.
Now that movie, the two black characters in that movie was Samuel L. Jackson and LL Cool J.
That's who I remember. Who was it? I just can't. I would have to go back and watch the movie because
Sam Jackson's character, he was like a I forgot what his character was, but he had a very high position, making good money. And then LL Cool J's character, he was like a cook. He was also like a part-time preacher as well, but he was a cook as well. But here's the thing about LL's character that I like. Yeah. And I don't want to say it because I might spoil it just in case you might watch it. And I think it was dope that they actually had a black character do this. But
you can go ahead and say it's fine.
He was responsible for killing all the sharks.
Okay.
He killed it was two main sharks in the movie, and he killed both of them. One of them he blew up in the kitchen because the gas turned on. He blew it up when he threw the lighter in, and he blew up the shark. And the other one he blew up with the battery. It was a battery that got shot into the shark, and he stuck the wire into the battery charge, and the shark blew up to keep the shark from getting out into the wild. Because if the shark got out, it would have been catastrophic. Because they basically made the shark's brains more developed, so they were able to maneuver in a way outside of a regular shark. So so that's the one thing I like about him, is that he actually, you know how they like in the movies they have the white savior.
Yep,
he was the savior. Like, he saved the people and he survived.
I see. Like almost like a magical Negro type of thing.
I guess you could probably say that.
Because to me, because the magical Negro to me is just like the black version of the white savior type of thing. But I think the thing that people need to understand that's the difference between the two is that when it comes to being a white savior, it's literally for that white person to look good in the eyes of like the audience, or for white people in general to say, hey, there are good white people out there, that type of thing. And then with the magical Negro, although it shows a black person being heroic, it's still for the greater good of the white person. So that white person still is held in like high esteem, and as if they're the most important person basically in that show or in that film. So it's funny how like they're like the opposite of each other as far as like who looks like the hero, but they still serve the same purpose. Yeah.
And I'm seeing a lot of people in the chat say, so I'll throw it out here: The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead. I have not seen Walking Dead either. There's a lot of shows I haven't seen. I ain't gonna lie to you. I have not seen Walking Dead either.
It was a lot. It was a lot of, man. Listen, if you watch The Walking Dead, you might have to do a part 2 to this, because The Walking Dead definitely had a lot of tropes in there with the black characters in it that they had in that show. I think they put a trope on every black character that was rotated in and out of that show. I don't think there was one straight and narrow black character that came through that show. Like, there was always something wrong with the character, even if the character did show a level of strength and survival skills. There was still something off with the characters. I mean, when you watch the show, like watch it from beginning to end, then you'll see what it is that I'm talking about. And also, don't get me started on a lot of the tropes that happen in a lot of these animated movies. Disney is notorious for those. I don't know if you saw you seen the movie called A Bug's Life, right?
Oh, most definitely.
Maybe it's just me, but tell me if I'm wrong. Does it feel like to you that movie was talking about slavery?
A little bit. I do have to go back and watch it, because the last time I seen it, I was like a teenager or something like that. But yeah, I do remember that it kind of feeling like that. Yeah,
because it was the one scene that was in that movie that made me feel that way, and I actually talked about it on my original channel, where it was a scene where the grasshopper, the main one, said, if Hopper, he said, he was telling his crew. He said, imagine if this grain right here is a tiny little ant. And then he knocked all of them out, and they all stumbled on top of the 2 grasshoppers that were there. He says, if I'm trying to remember what he says, if one ant stands up, then they'll all stand up. These puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. And I said that is literally talking about slaves rebelling. I said, Disney, Pixar, I see what you did there. I didn't catch it as a kid, clearly, but as an adult, I caught that.
Yeah, I could see that. I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of like the allegories that you see in movies like Planet of the Apes. That clearly was talking about like us revolting. Because if you think about it, the Planet of the Apes movie, like the concept was made based off of the Watts riot, if you think about it. So it kind of shows those that there's like some level of an allegory, and even in like the cartoons or in things that don't even really involve black people at all.
Yeah. And I said, a lot of times they'll hide stuff in these movies. Another one they did it in was in that movie Zootopia.
I ain't seen Zootopia.
Man, Zootopia, they could have swapped out the animals for real people. And that, all I'm gonna say is just watch it. I'm not gonna say too much about it. Just watch Zootopia, and you'll see it's like, wow, like they really, went there. And I'm noticing that they're doing that quite often lately with a lot of these movies, and a lot of times they'll put them in animated form because they figure, oh, we're trying to get the kids to come and watch it because, you know, we'll get the money just because it's kids. But there's a lot of adults that go watch it. Like, for instance, that new movie, well, it's the second one, that movie, that Inside Out.
Yeah,
I've seen more adults talk about that than the kids.
Yeah, I could believe that. I can see that.
I've seen a lot of adults literally talk about that movie to no end, more than the kids have, even though that's supposed to be a kids type film.
Right. Yeah, no, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I have anything else to ask. Like, I think we pretty much laid it out right here. We talked about, like I said, time is not a thing. I didn't even realize it was after 9 o'clock.
I didn't either.
Like I said, as I said, this is just like a smooth conversation. I'm glad you came on here. We took time. I'm glad we spoke and finally met. We was in DC, and that's when we set this up. I was like, because I wanted to tell you, I wanted to ask you in person, because I could have easily DM'd you, like that would have been nothing. And
right.
Ask you to, come on here, and I'm glad that you chose it. And I was so glad, low key, that you said Friday. I was like, I'm so glad that you said Friday. What a way to end the week off, then, with this and you coming on here and, my audience being introduced to you in case they weren't aware of you before. Again, if y'all have not done so already, please go ahead and subscribe to his channel. Everything that we're talking about right now, he talks about on his channel and then some. And also make sure, if you haven't done so already, to go ahead and purchase the book. I just posted the link to his book right there in the chat again. But do you have anything else that you want to say before we get up out of here?
Most definitely. Just to kind of reiterate what Torian was saying, on YouTube and Instagram is where you'll see most of my content. So if you continue to follow me and you check out this book, you'll see all the updates on all the other things that I'll be doing as well too. Like I said, I'm also a speaker. I'm also a comic book creator, so I plan to create my own comic book in 2025. So you definitely are going to want to follow me on my journey where I like literally break down images, but I'm also going to be creating my own content too.
Definitely. And of course, y'all already know where y'all can find me, and y'all already subscribed to the channel. I mean, y'all are here. But shout out to everybody again that came through. Shout out to also LW Levon, Inspired Truth broadcast, and Jay the Informant for the super chats. I'm greatly appreciative of that already. Yes, the people are subbing to you already. I'm telling you, you might hit that 1,000 before the end of the night. I'm banking on it. That's actually definitely going to happen. Make sure, of course, to continue checking out Cool Colas's content on YouTube. Purchase that book, read it, because I literally read a chapter a day. I read a chapter per day, because the thing is, like, one of the things when I get started, I just can't stop. And
you flew through it.
Yeah, like, because if I put it down, then that might end up being catastrophic. So I decided to get through it, and now I can look at things through a different lens. As a matter of fact, the next movie I plan to go see is A Quiet Place Day One, and they got Lupita being the lead. So I'm really going to be looking at, because now you have a black lead actress in a horror movie. So I'm really going to be paying attention to see what they're going to have her doing in this movie very closely.
Most definitely. Yeah. Other thing I was going to say to you too is I definitely want to, come on again at some point, especially when I do like the other books for the Pro Black Blerd series. Because like one thing I do want to kind of do at some point, this is a slight spoiler, is I want to create a book where I actually talk about like everything related to blerd culture itself. So although I broke down tropes, but I want people to kind of know about how it's different than nerd culture. So
nice.
You're gonna have to break that down too.
Yes, definitely. That sounds that sounds very interesting, but I can't wait to see what else comes from this series. And with that being said, everybody, I hope y'all all have a good night. There will be an 11 a.m. premiere video tomorrow. The window is already up. Make sure y'all go ahead and hit the like button on that and the notification just in case, and join the Discord just in case YouTube doesn't want to send out the notifications. With that being said, everybody, y'all have a good night. Be safe and be one.